goes like first violin, second violin, viola, first violin, second violin. But you get all three parts of it at once, don't you?
It's a big fat viola band. I enjoy it. I just really, really enjoy it.
I think I need to write a D sharp and a C natural in that part.
Slightly faster.
Yeah, I think if it's too sluggish, it's just a disaster.
When it's slightly slower, I can't play the ones. That's why is that?
I need to write in a G sharp.
I don't know. It's
It's
like
I've got B natural.
or maybe you're just more alert because you've got.
That instantly spins my brain into not playing an F natural.
Yeah, they're
Two
recording
G
every
sharp.
single thing we say. Yeah, well, more for them.
Do the next one.
Yeah, why not? First, we're doing the next one. This is the one you wanted to do, Henry, isn't it? Yeah, now we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Roll your sleeves up.
How fast do you want it?
Fine. Okay. Right, go. That was fast and I couldn't read half of it.
Exactly, great.
My arms feels really, really, really feels like it's going to fall off. It's like Cindy's arm.
Might have to pierce your nose for a real earring.
Yeah, well, I put a pin in my Cindy's ear.
I'm going to get my little girls.
Sarah, I believe in myself.
Sorry?
I gave a lot of myself.
I thought that you did.
Really?
I'm just going to say
We're going to take it down. We're going to take it back. Yeah. Yeah. We're just going to coast. Yeah, coast it. It was very
I've got an
emotional.
arrangement with the Shostakovich cello concerto.
Oh yeah, let's make it do it. Or the Elgar.
I've got an arrangement with the Elgar.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just for
nice.
cello actually.
Yes, it's just well, the cello suites. What about those part
We've got an
things?
arrangement
I've got an
about
arrangement
cello
with the
suites. It doesn't say no cello. We'll have a little
I
break.
always bring the arrangement along.
Oh my god, I might actually buy the
Chancel?
That'd be hilarious.
Is that
Chancel, yeah.
Chancel okay?
Yeah. Do you want to play with that too, Belle? I'll play them. I'll play them for you.
Thank
They
you.
played this twice today.
No, he played Salute to More twice.
Oh, okay.
You're getting completely confused between.
This is du matin.
Yes. Or did you want to do de nuit?
No, I like
It's a nice French accent.
Yeah. Someone's put some fingering in, that's not right, it's just you, yeah.
Right.
Trust me, I've got some really good ideas.
You can tell me all about them over
Later.
I have a coffee tomorrow.
So I should really give away my tricks of the trade here in front of the camera.
You think you're doing your own YouTube channel, don't you?
Over. I'm going to show you how to play this piece of music.
Oh my god.
Well,
We could do the Presta from that Mozart, or actually the Andante from the Mozart we were doing earlier.
Let's do that.
And the Presta.
Something
Which one's that?
C.
It's in 3/8.
Okay.
The camera is in 3/8.
Do you mean the quartet one?
Yeah,
Is it called Andante?
it is called under. Yes, it's that one.
Do you
Which
think we
one
really
is
have to do
it?
that?
Oh, what about the fast one? The
Let's do the
Presto?
fast one.
Okay.
Which one is it?
We'll go. Well, no one wants to do the andante. So in the quartet in C, number 4, we're going to do the presto because no one wants to do the andante apart from me. Quartet in C.
Is that
When
after
I
the
was in
German?
before?
Yeah, I think it's about. Oh,
I don't know.
it's just before the violin concerto.
It's after the Jubilate. Is it?
Yeah, it must be after them.
Kind of nice.
Yeah, okay. So which one? The
Well, the
Andante?
presto, no one wants to do the. Unfortunately, I really like it.
I like the Andante. It's nice.
Right, let's do Andante.
Are we doing it? Okay.
What we doing?
If the andante, viola starts, should we not do the repeats then?
Be able to
That's us.
sympathise, but you
1,
have
2, 3, 1,
to.
something like that. Yes. You're wanting, yeah, you think they want to hear stuff they might actually first.
No, now no.
Yes.
What we play?
Let's do the sheep apparently.
Oh, no, I don't like it. Hold on.
I've got the bit.
I can always go together fast.
Can I play the Queen of Sheba out of her pan?
You want it, we're going to stick with one, it will be different.
It's really hard, this one.
Oh God, Chloe, it's this challenge. It's 4 o'clock. What's the time? Not 4 o'clock.
It's
5 o'clock chateau.
Trying to find it.
near the
Towards the beginning, yeah, it's like
Where?
after the bride, of course. It's going before from the beginning.
this is your wedding collection, so you've got the bridal stuff and the Queen Sheba.
Yeah, but I'm
Last time goes better.
Oh no, well, I can give you one of those, I'm sure.
sure I've got it somewhere.
Okay. My hands are too hot for this.
Good afternoon and welcome. The ceremony will start in just a few moments and the procession is on its way. But before that, I have a few notices that I need to give out. Can I ask you please to all check your mobile phones to make sure they're either on silent, vibrate, switched to flight mode, or even switched off. If you could do that now, because we've had some ceremonies where phones have gone off, whether it's a diary reminder or even phone calls, and it's a little bit disturbing for our speakers. Thank you. Should you wish to take photos or video the ceremony, can I ask that you do it discreetly and remain seated for the comfort of those guests around you? There will be the opportunity to purchase professional photos, and a stream of the event will be available on YouTube. The link will be on the graduation page. During the ceremony, the professional photographer will take photos. If anyone wishes to not have their photo taken because they'll be used for publicity, could I please ask you to let myself or a marshal know? In the extremely unlikely event that we need to exit the building in a hurry, please remain calm and seated. Marshals will assist you in exiting the building. For staff on stage, there is a fire exit to the left of the altar through the vestry. For people to my right, please exit through the rear tower door. For the people to my left, please exit through the door in which you came. Please wait to be directed by the marshals. When the ceremony has finished, the procession will leave the church and you will all be asked to stand. The procession will be followed by the graduates, our VIPs, and our remaining guests can then follow. Please make your way to the marquee behind the Vincent Centre, where we'd like you to join us for the reception. If children become unsettled during the ceremony, could I ask that you take them outside for a breath of air? It can get quite stuffy in here, and it can be a long time for them to sit so that they don't disturb the ceremony. And finally, to our graduands, may I be the first to congratulate you on your achievement. When your name is called, please step onto the stage. You will shake the Chancellor's hand before looking to the camera to my left for your official photo. When you leave the stage, please walk down the centre aisle to the back of the church, where a marshal will escort you to your seat. Thank you. Please enjoy the ceremony and the rest of your day. Can I please ask you to be upstanding for the procession?
Please be seated.
Good afternoon and welcome to Buckingham. My name is Mary Archer and I have the honour to be the Chancellor of the University. And so it falls to me to welcome you to this graduation ceremony. Graduation is a rite of passage, and this is a day that you, our new graduates, will always remember with justifiable pride. Because today is a very special occasion, not only for you, but also for your family and friends and supporters, and for those who have taught you, mentored you, and encouraged you. As I think you'll be aware, you have enjoyed the benefits of the very high standard of teaching and personal attention that is such a distinctive feature of university life here in Buckingham. And I know you will have studied hard to achieve your goals. I hope you've enjoyed being part of the diverse and multicultural student body, which will have introduced you to people, experiences, traditions, and cultures from across the world. You are the latest in a long and lengthening line of distinguished graduates from the University of Buckingham. When you look back at your time here and remember the support and encouragement you received, we hope you will remember us fondly and act as ambassadors for your university. I congratulate each and every one of you and wish you every good fortune in your chosen careers and future life. Thank you.
Dame Mary, Registrar, Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Associate Dean of Psychology, Honorary Graduands of the University, and parents and friends, let me welcome you all to this ceremony this afternoon for degrees in the School of Psychology. I'm so thrilled to be here. My name is James Tooley. I'm the Vice-Chancellor. And I particularly want to give my warmest thanks to Dame Mary Archer for being with us today and throughout this week of wonderful graduation ceremonies. I'm so glad you chose the University of Buckingham, our unique boutique university. I'm so proud of it and hope that as you go into the world, you will look back with pride too. On this spot, in 1976, the very first matriculation speech was given for the University College at Buckingham, as it was then, in 1976, on this very spot. And this was delivered by one Margaret Thatcher, who at the time was, if you recall, leader of the opposition in 1976. She went on to become, in 1979, Britain's first female Prime Minister, and when she resigned from politics in 1992, she became our second Chancellor. And just like Dame Mary, now she contributed very much to the running, the organisation of the university, and like Dame Mary, was very active and very involved with students. Margaret Thatcher was excited by this university because of its commitment to independence and freedom, and academic freedom and free speech. And she said a few things in her inaugural speech that day on 1976, which I think are worth quoting today and remembering even today. Independence, she said, we must remember, is not a gift. It is not something that governments confer, but something that a free people enjoys and uses. Freedom, she says, requires vigor and imagination in using the opportunities available. And she concluded, but unless we are worthy and able to take advantage of a freedom not yet extinguished in our land, we shall become pale shadows like civilizations before us who were eventually thrust aside and dispossessed by more vigorous rivals. So the University of Buckingham, we're proud of our independence, our independent traditions, our freedom of thought and reflection. And indeed, we could reflect on this day in history when Karl Popper, one of my heroes, Sir Karl Popper, he was born on the 28th of July, 1902, so he would have been 120 now. He's Austrian, then British philosopher, academic, and social commentator. But he had things to say about freedom and democracy and so on. And one of his wonderful lines is, The aim of argument or of discussion should not be victory, but progress. And on academic freedom and free speech, very strongly he said, the war of ideas is a Greek invention. It is one of the most important inventions ever made. Indeed, the possibility of fighting with words and ideas instead of fighting with swords is the very basis of our civilization, and especially of all its legal and parliamentary institutions. So these are words of Karl Popper that I really value and I think are relevant today. As you know, universities around the country and the world are having difficult times sometimes with the concept of academic freedom. I mentioned it was Karl Popper's birthday today, and I like to look back on this period, this week in history, when I'm giving graduation speeches. And this week in history was very important in politics back in 1945. And it's quite relevant actually to some of the political shenanigans that have been going on lately, given that Boris Johnson's hero was Winston Churchill, and in 1945, in the post-World War II election, Winston Churchill lost that election, and the British people voted for the Attlee government to take his place. I think there are some wonderful things that Winston Churchill said which are relevant to us today as we go into this graduation ceremony. First of all, the virtues of modesty and humility. This is what he said about winning the war. I have never accepted, he said, what many people have kindly said, namely that I inspired the nation. It was the nation and those dwelling all around the globe that had the lion's heart. I had the luck to be called upon to give the lion's roar. The war, of course, had many ups and downs, successes and failures, and in our lives, my life and your lives, I'm sure you will have had not an even keel, but some things you've tried and failed at, some things you then go on to succeed in. But success is never permanent. There are these failures and successes throughout. And Winston Churchill had a nice line about success and failure. I think he said, success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And finally, from Winston Churchill, on this day for you, he gave this sentiment that I think we can share. To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. I'd like to think that at the University of Buckingham, we have made you prepared and qualified for when that moment or those moments arise for you too, when figuratively you're tapped on the shoulder and there's an opportunity or a challenge or an adventure or a possibility that is unique to you, that has your name on it, as it were. And I'd like to think we have prepared you and qualified you to embrace those moments and to avoid the tragedy of losing, making an impression on your finest hour. Someone once remarked, there are two lasting bequests we can give our children. One is roots, the other is wings. And this reminds me of the University of Buckingham's motto, Alice volans proprius, flying on our own wings. I'd like to think that we have helped you gain your wings so you can fly high as you leave the university and go into the world. But I'd like to think we've also given you roots, and we want to be a strong part of your roots too. As we finish the ceremony today, you go from graduand to graduate, and we'd like to see you We'd like you to see yourselves as part of a growing international family of alumni of this University of Buckingham. I wish you well in all the next stages of your lives. I know that you will be able to confront challenges and rise to opportunities as they come your way. I wish you well, and I just ask you, please keep in touch.
Chancellor, Mr. Graham Jones, University Orator, will present Professor Jane Ogden for the degree of Doctor of Science of the University, Honoris Causa.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, Professor Ogden, I suspect that when you were in the same situation those years ago when you got your first degree in neurobiology from the University of Sussex, you remember that day. And you will all remember today. And it's really special for your first degree that you will always remember today. Even if you go on to education, as Professor Ogden did do to other universities, your first degree, those of you getting your first degree, will always be special. You will always remember today. I was reminded of my first graduation a little earlier when talking to Professor Ogden, because I have a connection with Professor Ogden that she wasn't aware of. And that's because Professor Ogden is from the University of Surrey, where I got my first degree. And so I have a very strange memory of my first degree ceremony, because I didn't go, but I was there. And the reason for that was that the university finished on the Friday, my job started on the Monday, my new boss had told me you can't have the day off, so I had said I would not go to the graduation ceremony. The graduation ceremony, though, was held in Guildford Cathedral, and as a student at the University of Surrey, my boss decided the day before that I should go, because my job at the time, before I became an academic, I spent some time as a newspaper reporter. So there I was, a cub reporter on the Surrey Advertiser, and the person who had been going to cover the graduation ceremony from the local paper had been taken ill the day before, and so the editor said to me, you can go, you understand the university. So all my friends, like you will be in a moment, coming up to shake the hands of the Chancellor, were all coming up to shake the hands of the Chancellor, and as they stood here to have their picture taken, they were looking at me sitting over there, wondering what on earth I was doing there. So I have a very strange memory of my first graduation. So you can imagine that when I discovered that Professor Ogden had been nominated for her honorary degree, I have a special connection with it because of coming from the University of Surrey, where Professor Ogden now works. When I was a student at Surrey, it was no bigger than Buckingham is now, just about 3,500 students. Today, it's grown to more than 16,000 students. And much of that has been down to the pioneering work of leading academics like Professor Ogden, who's been there for 17 years. Professor Ogden is the Professor of Health Psychology and the author of the leading textbook on the subject. I suspect that students here will have read her textbook. She told The Psychologist magazine that writing the latest edition nearly killed me. So we're glad it was only nearly. But one textbook was not enough, it seems. And so Professor Ogden wrote another 7. Plus something else that many of her academic colleagues might not know, but she's also written a novel about Cuba. And that adds another connection to us here at the university, because this university houses the International Institute for the Study of Cuba, led by Dr. Stephen Wilkinson. And I'll put you in touch with him because his PhD was about novels about Cuba. So he may well need to update his thesis. I'm not sure how Professor Ogden actually found the time to write a novel. Her list of research papers on her biography page at the University of Surrey scrolls down so much you feel like you're on one of those never-ending web pages. Have you ever been on one of those that keep going? Yeah, it seems just like that when you scroll down. In fact, there are so many research papers, her CV is 21 pages long. She has completed so much research and she's cited so widely that her work has been cited by other 10,000 other researchers. That's a phenomenal amount of work that's been cited by many other people. So I'm sure that among you all today there will be people here inspired by Professor Ogden, hoping to achieve even just a small amount of what she's done. So as psychologists, it will be worthwhile for you to know what Professor Ogden has said is her nugget of advice for aspiring psychologists. She says, you should know lots of theories. You clearly know that because you're here today. In lots of areas, and read lots of different types of studies. Then use all of that to do something novel and creative. Don't just reinvent the wheel. And that's clearly good advice that Professor Ogden herself is an example of. She's taken traditional psychological research and applied it to health, in particular about eating behaviour. That's led her to be the expert in her field, sought after by journalists and broadcasters for expert comment. You may well have seen her on TV programmes about dieting and obesity. Now, I've got a little bit of a health warning for you, because after this ceremony, we'll all be heading off to the marquee on the Beloff lawn outside the Vincent building, where we will be able to sip champagne and grab some food, little nibbles that you'll be chomping on. So before you go there, you might want to read Professor Ogden's article for the British Heart Foundation, 6 Tips for Making Healthy Decisions About Food, because Professor Ogden will also be in the marquee. And so she may well be taking a peek at what you were eating. Though I'm really convinced she's going to ignore what I'm eating because I'm a Surrey graduate. Joking aside, I know that Professor Ogden would not criticise what any of us eat. Her work has been entirely positive, helping people to make the right choices based on solid psychological evidence. Indeed, her work has enabled doctors, nurses, dietitians, and nutritionists to think about their patients from a psychological perspective. In her interview with the Psychologist magazine, Professor Ogden said, "I constantly wonder what about the point of being an academic is and whether it makes any difference to anyone." It's worth saying, Professor Ogden, that you certainly have made a difference to countless numbers of people thanks to your academic research. As a Surrey graduate, that makes me proud, of course, which is why it's such an honour today to present to you for the Honorary Doctor of Science degree, Professor Jane Ogden.
It gives me very great pleasure to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Science, Honoris Causa.
Professor Ogden will now reply to convocation.
I did print it in larger font, but I still need my glasses, so I have to read it in larger font these days. So, Vice-Chancellor, Chancellor, graduates and fellow psychologists on the stage and out there, thank you so much for giving me this award. I'm incredibly chuffed and really, really pleased. And I promise I won't look at your food when we're in the marquee later on and judge you for anything that you're doing today or ever in the future. I've sat in many, many graduations over the years. The first time was, believe it or not, for me anyway, I'm rather surprised, was 35 years ago, where I sat where you all are now, in my flip-flops and my Amnesty International t-shirt, wondering what on earth lay ahead of me, and also how long my parents were going to hang around before I could go out with my friends. And since then, I've sat on the stage at Surrey University on many, many occasions, sitting up front with my colleagues and wondering if I was really meant to be an academic, although it's probably a bit late now to still have those kind of worries. And I've sat there and I've heard many people stand here and give their words of wisdom to all our graduates. And they've talked about finding your passion, following your dreams, being your best, and fulfilling your potential. And I've sat there, but I've never really known, or never really have known, what my passion was, or my dream was, or the best of me was, or what my potential actually was. And I found all that a bit unrealistic. So today that I'm actually standing here now, I thought I'd give you my own, hopefully more realistic words of wisdom. And I have 4. So the first one is to be kind to other people. And I'm so pleased to read that this is part of your university motto. But if everyone was a bit more kind to each other, then the world would be a much better place. And I'm a massive fan of Call the Midwife, if any of you are out there. And they seem to manage to just do it and be lovely to each other. So it can be done. The second is to be kind to yourselves. And as psychologists, we're a little bit prone to perfectionism and self-criticism, and that's sometimes why we become psychologists. But we can't all be the best, and maybe we shouldn't all be the best, and maybe we don't even want to be the best. So be happy with being good enough, with having tried, with being useful, or with having your heart in the right place. And forgive yourselves, be kind to yourselves when things go wrong. Third, stay curious. As we get older, we become experts in our own little area, and as you heard, I know a lot about eating behaviour. But we become really, really narrow until we know everything about very, very little. And that's not really any good to anybody. So please stay curious and learn about the world out there, whether it's history, art, music, science, or fashion, or in my case, a slight obsession with fossiling down on the beach in Lyme Regis, or also with politics, although I'm struggling to watch it at the moment. I find that the world goes from black and white to colour when you know a bit more about it, and it makes everything just a bit more exciting. And fourth, my final word of wisdom is have fun. Please, please remember to have fun. As your parents will testify, life goes stunningly fast. And before you know it, it's 35 years since you sat there. So please make sure you enjoy it. Find fun in whatever you're doing and surround yourself with the kinds of people that you can also have fun with, many of whom you may well have met during your time at university. And hopefully many of those will be kind and curious as well. So thank you.
Chancellor, I call upon Dr. Alan Martin, Associate Dean of Psychology, to present candidates for awards of the University of Buckingham in Psychology.
Chancellor, I present to you the graduates in psychology. I think I might have been a bit quick there. For the degree of Master of Science in Health Psychology, Bethany Angell with distinction. Naomi Crowson with distinction. Olivia French with distinction. Nikita Premnath with distinction. Liliana Savinska with Liliana Savinska. Deborah Tate. Abigail Wright with distinction. And now we have a group of students who have graduated from 2 programs, both the undergraduate degree in Bachelor of Science in Psychology and the Master of Science in Health Psychology. Probably the only group of graduating students who will ever receive both in the same graduation ceremony. So we begin with Victoria Bird with distinction in her Masters and First Class Honours. Israel Emmanuel. Rasheen Hampton. Rebecca Harding with distinction in the Masters and First Class Honours. Manisha Lal. Kelly Carley Ma. Abigail Moffat with distinction in her Masters and First Class Honours. Janisha Rajapaksa Mudian Selege with distinction. Lydia Titmarsh with distinction in her Masters and First Class Honours. Ramilikun Yusuf. Faye Treadwell. And now, for the degrees of Bachelor of Science in Psychology, Saman Awan with First Class Honours. Andre Babanta. Luke Beck. Sadia Begum. Alba Biba. Caitlin Bota. Demi Brockway. Kerry Burke with First Class Honours. Kai Chadwick. Katie Collier. Zoe Cooper with first class honours. Lauren Cox with first class honours. Bani Demoko Kakaldi. Jade Dyer. Bethan Garrett. Catherine Denise Guilfoyle with first class honours. Holly Goddard with first class honours. Sarah Goswell with first class honours. Devon Griffiths. Elika Guzenda with first class honours. Sophie Halliday Chambers. Salem Haroon. Alice Holden. Arif Iqbal with first class honours. Kesavan Kanagaratnam. Alina Katinska. Kalpana Khatri with first class honours. Hafiza Khatun. Udni Katama. Fawn Lara. Ho Him Law. Rebecca Lawson. Daniel McCarthy with first class honours. Susanna Miles with first class honours. Alexander Moffat. Morgan Mohan Anandan. Zinzel Msifa. Kisran Nakvi. Mariam Pagliari. Stephen Peach with first class honours. Sophie Pizzle with first class honours. Haris Qureshi with first class honours. Ella Victoria Ramsey with first class honours. Lauren Reed. Kathleen Richmond with first class honours. Jamie Robertson with first class honours. Claire Ronsaray. Catherine Emily Rowley with first class honours. Safira Saleh. Gabrielle Sampson with first class honours. Divya Shah. Nidhi Shah. Shanique Shakespeare. Hannah Tangen with first class honours. Oliver Thornley with first class honours. Lorraine Todd. Chloe Walsh with first class honours. Benedict Warburton. Cloughan Isis Webb. Kelsey Wright. Jared Yorkson. Fiza Zaidi. And for the degrees of Master of Business Administration, Emmanuel Godwins. Joshua Godwins. And finally, for the degrees of Master of Business Administration and Bachelor of Science in Business and Management, and in addition, the recipient of the Vice-Chancellor's Prize for an outstanding contribution to the life of the University, Zikang Li. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation of the degrees. I've been asked to give an address to you. I will keep that brief, although some of my colleagues will know when I have a brief discussion with them. It can last an hour, it won't do today. The first thing I'd like to say is we are just so pleased to see you all here in person. So I'd like to have a round of applause for everyone after particularly given that some of the students who have finished here, have been awarded their degrees today in this ceremony, were here during the whole of the period of the COVID-19, and of course this still continues with us today, but the lockdowns and our transfer of the degree online and all the difficulties that came with that. So I really applaud you for the excellent results that you and the other students have achieved, because it has impacted you significantly in your studies, but impacted everyone in their lives throughout the country. So we really appreciate seeing you all here today. And so many of you as well. It's so nice to see your faces again. Some of you I saw only on computer screens during 2020 and 21, and it's so nice to see you in the flesh, and we look forward to catching up with you in the marquee afterwards. Now, you heard earlier from Professor Ogden, and you will all know, some of you have just received your degrees in health psychology, that again we're reminded by this experience that we're going through with a worldwide pandemic, the importance of healthcare, but also the contribution that psychology can make to this healthcare and the contribution we make in that area. Our former Dean of the School of Science, as was, who sadly died in 2015, Mike Cawthorne, was always very supportive of psychology, but sometimes didn't understand quite why he had a medical background and bioscience background, and didn't understand why people wouldn't always take the drugs that they were prescribed or conform to the doctor's regimen exactly as they were told. And it was always interesting having discussions with those professionals in these areas, biosciences, medicine. I know some of our students have gone on to study medicine as well. Just understanding something about human behavior is so important, even when you're dealing with these other areas of science. And for you to understand how people think and behave is such an important contribution. And I was thinking about how the areas of research done by our staff in health psychology, creativity and expertise, and cyber psychology feed into this, and what we've learned over the past 2 or 3 years. I would say in cyber psychology, we learned that transferring a degree program online is not the same. It's not the same experience as seeing people in front of you in the flesh, in person. And we are so happy to be back teaching our students face-to-face and interacting with them. I can say this because our computing colleagues, who would normally be in the ceremony with us as part of the Faculty of Computing, Law and Psychology, they would tend to think that, this is great. You can suddenly have all these communications online with Teams, Zoom, all these platforms that we've had to use. But I think that was an intentional slip. I think that we lost that human connection. And I think in the psychology department, we really feel that. And we're so glad to be able to interact with the students again. With health psychology, we can see, and I'm sure the recent years' experience is going to be a boon for health psychologists, unfortunately, but a lot of very significant contribution that health psychologists can make. And our current undergraduate students, a couple of mine and others, are also looking at the impact of the pandemic on psychology and psychological health. So that will continue, I'm sure, for many years, an unfortunate natural experiment for psychologists. And then with creativity and expertise, really human endeavors, things that make us very distinct from other species, but also culturally very distinct. So I think those areas of psychology that we do research in are really fundamental to understanding human nature. And I hope that you will use the skills that you've acquired on the psychology degrees, both undergraduate, some of you postgraduate, in your careers and lives ahead. Professor Tooley mentioned Karl Popper. Karl Popper is also a hero of mine. He's very important in the PhD work I did, but for a different reason. He was a very important philosopher in the 20th century. But the work that I did focused on understanding of science and Popper's idea of the demarcation problem. This is how do you understand whether a problem or an issue is a scientific problem or something else, either something that can't be addressed with science or something which is pseudo-scientific. And of course, with the advent of the internet and huge amounts of information, we're awash with misinformation. Professor Ogden was very positive in her talk, but I'm sure there's a lot of misinformation about eating and eating behavior, things that contrast wildly with what would be the advised professional recommendations. So I'd hope that you, as science graduates as well as psychologists, will bear in mind that you should be always alert to that problem of demarcation. What is scientific and what is pseudo-scientific? And help people to understand and communicate to them through the psychological science that you've learned about and the processes that you've learned about to help them to live better, more productive lives. And I'll just finish with some thanks. Some of you will know there are academic staff members who are not here with us today, some who had left the university over the last 2 or 3 years. So I should say thank you to those, particularly Dr. Catherine Finlay, who was at the university for over a decade and effectively founded health psychology at the University of Buckingham. She's since moved on to the University of Reading, and we're always thankful for the work that she did in founding this subject at Buckingham. Another member of staff who helped found an area that we study, Marcia Popovats, also left the university last year. She went a little bit further than Reading. She moved to Melbourne, I believe it's Melbourne in Australia, and has set up a new life the other side of the world. But Marcia was very influential, as many of you will know, in setting up cyber psychology as an area of study in this department, and also one of the founding members of the BPS division in cyber psychology that started a few years ago. Then Emily Matacola has also left the university earlier this year, the program director in health psychology, also has left the country with her partner, who's a diplomat, and so has moved abroad with him. Emily was, again, hugely important in the area of health psychology and was the programme director of the Health Masters up until when she left in May this year. So is responsible for all the Health Masters degrees that you've achieved today. And we're so pleased to have Lindsay Roberts, who's with us here today on the stage, who's taken over as the programme director in health psychology. And also Fazil Sati, who was only with us briefly for just over a year, but I do feel sorry for Fazil. He joined just before the COVID-19 pandemic. He had about 8 weeks on site with us, and then had to do all the teaching throughout the pandemic online as part of the Health Masters team and some undergraduate teaching as well. And he moved to a London university, which was much better for his family situation otherwise, but we thank him too. I'd also like to welcome as well the new staff that we have, Sophia Patiska, Jackie Romain, and Karl Varashinsky, I think I got that right, who joined us across the last year, and also Lindsay, who joined us during the pandemic, that's been working with us for over 2 years and longer on the Health Masters. So we're really pleased to have staff who are joining us, and it's really important, as you know, who have been through our teaching model at Buckingham, that we have to recruit staff who want to spend time with our students. Jill Hill, Margaret, have helped me recruit staff for our programme, and it's our first consideration that we want staff who want to interact with you as students. And so to finish off, I'd also like to thank Jill as the programme director of the undergraduate programme for all the work that she did in helping us get through the COVID-19 experience and transferring our degree online, and all the other staff members here and who couldn't make it today for working so hard to help you get through such a difficult time for you and for them. So thank you all. Good luck in the future, and we hope to see all of you down in the marquee shortly. Thank you. That concludes the presentation.
The Chancellor will now conclude this ceremony.
Just before I do that, could I just ask our photographer, because I don't think I positioned myself quite right for one or two of those shots, have you got everything you need? Because if not, we'll run it again. Not the whole thing, you understand. No. Okay, great. Thank you. So the ceremony is now drawing towards its close. The Vice-Chancellor has reminded us of the motto of this university, Alice Volans Propries, flying on our own wings. May I now again congratulate our new graduates, not graduands, graduates, and wish you every success as you go forward, flying on your own wings and helping those that you will help in your professional and perhaps personal capacities to fly on their own wings too. It's also been a particular pleasure and honour to confer an honorary doctorate of science on Professor Jane Ogden. Never, I think, can her research expertise have been more needed than it has been over recent times when eating disorders and other difficulties of that nature have sadly become more prevalent, as Alan Martin reminded us. In a time when freedom of speech and independence of thought is under threat, something that the Vice-Chancellor alluded to, it was good to see this morning in the Daily Telegraph the piece that said of our university and our Vice-Chancellor, "This is what outstanding moral leadership looks like," referring to the independence of thought and the freedom of speech, which is so important to us here at Buckingham. The Vice-Chancellor also quoted, as he often does, Churchill. And Churchill's remark at the end of the war that while he had not, in his own estimation, been the lion, it had fallen to him to give the lion's roar. Thinking of last Tuesday evening's match and the upcoming match next Sunday, I think we might end with a little round of applause, or a big round of applause, for the Lionesses. Thank you. This ceremony is now concluded.
Please be upstanding.